Have you ever walked into your own home and felt like something wasn't right? A faint, musty smell drifting through the hallway, a patch of ceiling changing color as if it's hiding something, or the soft creak of wood at night, like something is quietly spreading inside the walls. We're promised that new houses are symbols of safety, of modern technology and advanced materials. Yet more and more people are discovering the opposite. Homes, only a few years old, are already rotting from the inside out as if they're destroying themselves. Every daily activity, cooking, showering, doing laundry, quietly creates moisture that gets trapped inside tightly sealed layers of materials. And when that moisture has nowhere to escape, it slips deep into wall cavities, softening the wooden structure, feeding mold, and turning the entire house into a saturated box hidden from the naked eye. Drywall, OSB, foam insulation, the things we think are durable, end up reacting like sponges, holding on to moisture and creating the perfect environment for toxic mold to grow. The scariest part isn't the mold you can see, it's the mold you can't. Most of the rot happens in silence, in the dark, right behind a perfectly painted wall. And when you start wondering why a brand new house is falling apart so quickly, the answer may not be your fault at all. It might be the way we build homes today. And if you want to understand why this is happening everywhere, keep watching, because the real secret is only just starting to reveal itself. Now place the fragility of modern houses next to a truth that feels almost unbelievable. In 1292, Cistercian monks near Oxford built a structure out of nothing but mud, straw, oak, and cow manure. And it's still standing today. That barn has survived for more than 7 centuries, enduring winters cold enough to freeze entire fields, storms that could rip the roofs off modern houses in minutes, and rains so heavy that today's drainage systems would struggle to cope. It stood before electricity, before machinery, before humans even understood material science, and yet somehow it endured everything. Meanwhile, countless new homes barely 10 or 15 years old already need new roofs, black mold removal, reinforcement for rotting walls, and structural repairs no one ever expects. This contrast isn't just intriguing. It forces a painful question. How could a medieval structure built by people with no modern engineering outperform the buildings we proudly call advanced? And if that makes you feel unsettled, keep watching, because the answer has nothing to do with miracles and everything to do with a building philosophy we've almost completely forgotten. If you think the difference between a modern house that falls apart easily and a medieval structure that survives for centuries is just about materials, then get ready for the real twist. The biggest problem isn't technology. It's the philosophy of building that has completely changed direction. Medieval builders, people with no machines and no modern scientific knowledge, possessed something the construction industry today has almost lost. They built with the assumption that a structure had to last for generations, had to withstand storms, time, and all the small inevitable mistakes that come with life. And what about us? We build to meet deadlines, to cut costs, to maximize profit, and sometimes to make sure a building only needs to survive, just long enough to outlive its warranty. Here's the part many people find hard to believe, but is absolutely true. In many sectors, modern houses don't fail because of a lack of technology. They fail because they're designed in a way that breakdowns are part of the economic model. Those sealed layers of materials, fast-drying adhesives, cheap engineered wood panels. These aren't accidents. their choices made to speed up construction and push costs as low as possible at the expense of a lifespan that medieval builders would have mocked. Today's construction industry operates as if everything is replaceable, while medieval builders worked as if everything needed to be preserved. And this contrast exposes the thing almost no one wants to say out loud. Many modern houses start destroying themselves from the very first day they're finished. If you've ever wondered why the newer a house is, the faster it seems to fail, feel free to share your thoughts, because the answer may lie in the very building philosophy we've chosen to follow. When you step inside a medieval building, the most surprising thing isn't the ancient timber beams or the massive pitched roof. It's a feeling that's hard to explain. The walls feel alive, not in a supernatural sense, but in the way they work like a quiet respiratory system, pulling in what we want to get rid of and breathing out what we need. Wattle and daub, that simple mix of clay, straw, and cow dung, turns out to be a far more sophisticated microbiological mechanism than anything we're stuffing into walls today. The clay in the daub acts like millions of tiny chambers, absorbing harmful moisture the moment it appears in the air and holding it inside the structure without ever letting it condense into water droplets. The very enemy modern walls constantly lose to. Then, when the indoor air becomes drier, the walls release that stored moisture back out in a steady, natural rhythm, preventing mold from ever taking hold. What makes this even more astonishing is that medieval builders pulled this off without knowing anything about microbiology or material science. They simply knew that houses with walls that ate moisture didn't rot, and houses that trapped moisture died quickly. Meanwhile, our tightly sealed modern walls, which seem so safe, end up becoming hidden mold incubators behind a shiny layer of paint. Looking back, it's hard to deny a strange truth. Medieval walls made from things we consider dirty ended up protecting people far better than many of the high-tech materials we rely on today. If wattle and daub walls are the lungs that let medieval buildings regulate moisture by themselves, then lime mortar is the hidden immune system that modern science didn't fully understand until the 2010s, 2020s. For centuries, people assumed the tiny white flecks scattered throughout medieval mortar were just signs of sloppy mixing. But MIT research flipped that assumption on its head. Those lime clasts are the very reason ancient structures have survived for thousands of years. When a small crack forms, which is inevitable in any building, rainwater seeps in and activates the dormant lime particles. They dissolve instantly, flow directly into the crack, and then recrystallize into fresh limestone, sealing the gap almost completely. In other words, every rainstorm doesn't weaken the building, it strengthens it. This is the exact opposite of modern construction. Portland cement is strong but brittle. It degrades when exposed to water, cracks spread, and once they spread, you're forced to replace entire sections. Medieval builders didn't know the words self-healing or chemical reaction, but they understood that this mortar stuck better, lasted longer, and stayed alive the longest. Looking back, it's hard not to feel stunned. Modern technology took hundreds of years to explain something ancient builders did by instinct. Medieval walls didn't just stand, they healed themselves. Among all the secrets medieval builders discovered, none came at a higher cost than foundations.
It is heavy.
Before the 13th century, European communities often built houses by burying wooden posts directly into the ground, believing the weight of the structure would keep everything stable. But winter after winter, they kept witnessing things they couldn't explain. Walls leaning even in gentle winds, floors softening as if they were breathing, and entire houses rotting from the base after only a single season. Nobody understood why until the older craftsmen began digging up those deeply buried posts and found something that made their skin crawl. The wood was completely decayed, as if eaten away by an invisible hand. That moment became a turning point, almost mythic, in medieval construction. They realized the ground doesn't just support, the ground kills. Bury wood in soil, and the house dies within a season. From that harsh truth, they invented the stone pad foundation, setting wooden posts on large slabs of stone to lift them above the moisture constantly lurking below the surface. But they didn't stop there. The wiser communities developed something far more complex: the rubble trench foundation. A deep trench filled with large stones, smaller gravel, and layers of drainage materials they never gave scientific names to, but understood perfectly. Water must never be allowed to sit still. Wind could move through the gaps, water could drain into the earth, but the wood always stayed dry and alive. The strangest part is that without blueprints or theory, they built foundations as if they were protecting the very life of the house. If you've ever wondered why some medieval buildings still stand perfectly upright today, feel free to share your thoughts, because the story of their foundations is only just beginning to unfold. If medieval walls could breathe, then their house frames could almost move. In an age when storms could tear down an entire village in a single night, medieval builders didn't create stiff, rigid boxes like we do today. They built giant skeletons that could bend. Medieval timber frames didn't use a single metal nail. Everything was connected through mortise and tenon joints and wooden pegs that swelled with moisture and dried with the seasons, tightening themselves naturally as the weather changed. The result was a structure that didn't try to resist the force of the wind, but absorbed and dispersed it, like the spine of a living, resilient creature. In old accounts of the 1703 storm, people wrote that many newly built houses were ripped apart board by board like toothpicks, while medieval frames groaned, leaned with the wind for a moment, then sprang back into place as if taking a long breath. That flexibility is exactly what kept them standing where modern buildings snapped. Medieval frames weren't rigid, they were elastic, and that's why they survived disasters without steel or bolts. Those ancient craftsmen didn't know phrases like load dispersion or structural ductility, but they understood that a house had to bend if it wanted to endure. And looking at the timber frames still standing today, it's hard to deny they grasped a truth we are slowly forgetting. Among all medieval building secrets, nothing was valued more than controlling water. The ancients feared rain far more than fire because they understood something we're slowly forgetting. Water never attacks head-on. It sneaks in, seeps downward, and kills a house in silence. That's why medieval roofs were pitched so steeply. They looked like they were trying to cut the sky in half, often reaching 50-55 degrees, so water and snow couldn't cling to them for even a few seconds. Distrusting luck, they oversized everything: bigger roofs, thicker rafters, heavier tiles, all to ensure that even the worst storm couldn't find a weak point to exploit. Slate roofs could last 400, 500 years, each piece set individually with wooden pegs, so that when one tile cracked, a builder could replace just that one spot, and the rest of the system kept working as before. There were no one-sheet covers the whole roof. Materials like modern construction uses. Medieval design treated each part as something that could sacrifice itself without bringing the whole structure down.
Grip it steady now.
In their
Keep your eye on the
philosophy,
peg.
the roof wasn't just for keeping out the rain. It was the first and most important shield, protecting the entire building. And the longer you look, the clearer it becomes. Medieval builders didn't fight water with hope. They fought it with survival-level obsession. If the first three secrets explain why medieval buildings survived the weather, the fourth explains why they survived time itself. Medieval builders didn't build to meet deadlines, didn't build to sell, didn't build for a 5-year warranty. They built as if every beam, every joint, every stone was being sent to someone who didn't exist yet. A 13th century carpenter driving a wooden peg into a frame knew perfectly well he would never be the one to see it rot. Not even his child would, but his child's child's child might. That mindset created a style of construction that, by today's standards, looks almost excessive. Beams larger than necessary, roofs heavier than reasonable, joints thick enough to withstand an earthquake no one had ever imagined. But that wasn't showing off. It was a political statement for their era. A house wasn't the property of an individual. It was the inheritance of a community. While we live in an age of constant replacement, where a broken door means swapping the entire frame, and a cracked wall means tearing it out and starting over, medieval people treated maintenance like a ritual. A moment when the whole village came together to whitewash, replace thatch, tighten pegs, reminding each other that they were caring for something their ancestors had entrusted to them. And here comes the twist that makes many people flinch. We, with all our modern technology, are building structures more fragile than those built by people who had no science at all. If you've ever felt like something about that seems wrong, tell me, are we actually building homes or just renting time from them? If you've followed along this far, you're probably starting to feel something strange. The more we compare, the more we realize that medieval houses, crude as they were, built with bare hands, actually show a level of intelligence modern buildings often lack. And this is the final part, where the full picture becomes clear. Medieval people didn't see a house as an object. They saw it as a living organism. The walls had to breathe, the roof had to shield, the frame had to bend, the foundation had to drain, and people had to care for it like a member of the family. When a wall changed color, they knew immediately it was a warning. When the roof leaked, they didn't wait another season. When mortar flaked, they didn't patch it halfway. They lime-washed, replaced pegs, and passed those skills to the next generation. In contrast, we treat houses like disposable goods. Buy fast, build fast, fix fast, and hope the house takes care of itself. That mindset is the deeper reason modern homes fail faster than medieval ones. We didn't lose the techniques. We lost the relationship with our own buildings. And here's the final hook. What we call advanced may actually be pulling us further away from the durability medieval people saw as obvious. The lesson isn't that we should go back to living with cow dung or hot lime mortar, but that we should revisit the core philosophy. A long-lasting home isn't just made from strong materials. It's made by people who understand it, care for it, and respect the time it needs to endure. If you feel there's something in that philosophy worth thinking about, leave a comment about what you believe we've lost. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep exploring the ancient knowledge modern life may need to relearn from the beginning.